You're going to leave in the aborted opening, though, right?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gaming Without Parole. My name's Bryan. Sitting across from me, the ever-illustrious Mike Zeller.
Yep.
What's up?
Yeah. Well, so I was kind of late coming over here, and...
This is a show about gaming news and gaming past.
Yeah. Gaming
Past.
Oh, past.
Gaming news, gaming past.
Yeah.
It's our new tagline.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Perfect.
You hate it.
Yeah, I do. So, when I was a little late coming over here,
yeah,
and the reason being is because of my cat. So I had my cat fixed recently, which I think is an interesting turn of phrase, considering that now everything else in my house is broken, but the cat's fixed.
You've been thinking about that one for a while.
I have, yeah. I was thinking about that on the whole drive over here. Like, that's a sweet one. I can't wait to roll that son of a bitch out.
Nice.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess she's just feeling like she's got nothing left to lose, so might as well just wreck everything.
Yeah.
And so my house is just a fucking disaster.
Now you have another cat. This is a new kitten.
This is the kitten.
And so you have another cat. The other cat's Patrick.
Yep.
What's the new one?
Neela.
Yeah. That's like brand new to me, I guess.
That may have been the first time I've told you that.
Maybe.
It's not really as much as we talk about cats on this show, I guess.
We do.
Yeah.
Fucking cats.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Well, it's a reference to our first podcast.
I didn't realize it was that kind of show. Maybe
okay.
I gotta look at that contract again.
We have a contract. You're not getting paid for this, are you?
Oh well, I've just been taking things when I leave.
That's where they're going. Mike, so is Patrick participating in the chaos in the house?
Not really, other than he's just another victim. Poor guy.
So he just watches? He just lays around and is like,
oh shit, what's going on over there? Yeah, pretty much. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you think I should be having him stop? What are you doing, man? Why didn't you stop her?
Well, he's kind of like the babysitter when you're not there.
I guess. I mean, maybe I guess that's why they don't use cats as real babysitters.
True.
Anyway,
welcome to Gaming Without Parole.
Our cat fan cast.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I briefly had a cat. It was a stray. She must have been a kitten. She was pretty small or really skinny, one or the other. And I had to get rid of her because we weren't on the same sleep schedule. That was a big issue.
Yeah, that's a problem.
More importantly, when I yelled at her when she was doing something wrong, she'd run behind my entertainment center and like start clawing at wires, and like consoles would start like getting pulled off of the shelf.
I'm just picturing, yell at me, huh? Fuck you! What do you think of this, huh? Yell at this,
and that's what it was. And then like she'd just like sleep behind the consoles, and I could just picture like the cat hair getting sucked into the vents. I'm like,
yeah,
just you gotta go.
Well, yeah. I'm gonna write it out and see. You know, they're cats. They're not typically known for being really high energy for long periods of time. So yeah. I think I just gotta write it out till she's got it all out of her system.
Okay. And you're way more patient than I am.
That's true. I am. I'm very patient.
Way to go. So Mike, why don't you explain just go watch our first video. Why don't you know what we're doing here?
It's great.
A brief synopsis of what Gaming Without Parole is all about.
Well, every time I describe this, we always then talk about how my description is completely wrong. Yeah, it's really bad. Well, the idea that we came up with originally was to have a podcast about video games and about being a big video game enthusiast, but also about like having a regular life and doing other things, and how you kind of square life with also being a big gamer. And then we kind of realized that neither of us apparently do that very well.
Nope.
Although we did just talk about cats. We talked about other life issues. Occasionally we bring up jobs. I think we don't want to talk about our work because we never want our works to find out that we do this.
My work knows that I do this. When I go to work, this is all I talk about.
Yeah. I'm picturing you with your phone, like going around showing it to everybody. You're like showing it to the customers.
Why do you think we have any views at all?
Yeah.
It's because I make them sit there for an hour and a half and go, still going. Yeah, that's kind of the case.
Your customers are like, so what's good today? Well, you know what's good. What's good today is the fish, and also this video. And it's like, check this out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't lie. I did do that once the other day.
Nice.
Yeah. No. Well, if I feel as though if I reach the level of comfort with a customer who wants my phone number, like that, we're going to be like friends and hang out. That's when I'm like, hey, check out my YouTube channels.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked that happened.
Yeah.
You really hit it off. I don't think I've ever...
She was a girl.
Really?
Really strange.
Wow.
Like, strange that I would give my number to a girl. Because generally I try to, like, exile them from my life as much as possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
There we go. There goes half the
You
view
don't
rate.
play video games, and when you do, you're not very good.
Oh,
Send your
man.
hate mail this way
Yikes.
this week.
Yikes.
Yeah, we're kidding.
Yeah.
Mike, I wanted, before we even start off here, I want to, not that anyone was like begging for us to have an episode last week, but I do want to apologize and say that I was sick. I was in bed for like 9
really
days
sick.
with the flu. I missed a whole week of work, and I beat Super Metroid.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
I guess if you're gonna
Thumbs up for the flu.
I guess if you're gonna miss out on an entire paycheck, that's might as well do it that way.
I mean, so the thing is I always whenever I'm buying games, I'm thinking to myself, I know I'm not going to get around to playing this right now, but there's going to be that time in my life where like maybe I can't buy games, or maybe I'm like laid up and maybe full up, whatever. So that's the time where I'm going to want one of these games to like really occupy my time. So I'm not spending money. You know, I'm just like laying there playing a game, and that's exactly what happened this vacation. Except for all the other games I bought while I was sick. Thank you, Amazon.
Yeah, that's true. And you got to be really sick to not be able to internet shop.
Yeah, I did have to put a pretty big hold on it though.
Yeah, I was
totally fine.
Because you don't have sick time either, as
no,
you told me. So this is like you're missing an entire pay. Like when I'm out sick, I'm at least getting paid for it most of the time.
No, as a waiter, I get paid $2.63 an hour. I live exclusively on tips. I get $0 paychecks. So no sick time, nothing, no health benefits either.
Well, that's another whole issue.
Yeah. How are we looking back there? Good.
Yeah,
it's good enough.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll find out when we're listening to it.
Yeah, we will. It's gonna be horrible.
So you brought up something though, the fact that you were playing Super Metroid for the first time.
Yes,
and I'm not one of these people that believes in like a video game canon or like a film canon. I always find that really obnoxious when you admit like, oh, I haven't played this game, or I haven't watched this movie, or I haven't read this book, and they're like, what? You haven't read? Blah. Yeah, because I've been doing other shit. But I do have to say, the number of like awesome games that you own but have never played.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then, well, it's that would be one thing, but then you pair that with like the shit that you're usually playing, and it's like, what is going on? Like, we've talked a bunch of times about that you've never played Snatcher. You would love Snatcher,
and I have it,
and you own it. Yeah, which again,
not terribly
like,
common.
Yeah,
game
like
to
that's you're hitting things perfectly, and you've never played it, and you're like, I'm gonna go fire up Carrier on my Dreamcast, or like, I'm going to do a second playthrough of Resident Evil 6 or something, and it's...
Oh, no.
No, I know you...
One playthrough, that was enough. But yeah. No, I do have an affinity for maybe games that aren't of the highest caliber. It's one of those things where I think games like Super Metroid, people talk about in the highest regard, and they're like, this is the best... I think a lot of people put it as number one, best game ever made.
It's definitely... I would say almost always in the top 5 of those kinds of lists, and it's pretty frequently number one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I feel like for me, there's like a barrier to entry, and the barrier is that when I start playing, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if I don't like follow a guide, if I don't do something like these are games that are filled with secrets, and it's just. And I didn't play them growing up, so I didn't have the Nintendo Power. It's not ingrained in my brain, like exactly what to do, go where. And I just think that like I'm not going to get the full enjoyment out of it. I'm going to get frustrated and blah blah blah. So that's my barrier to entry, is thinking that like I'm not really going to learn on the fly. I'm going to be stuck and miserable and not get the full enjoyment out of it. This is this was interesting, to be honest with you. Like I played for a few hours with no assistance at all. And I was like, this is really good.
Oh yeah.
You know, like the atmosphere and the mood and like just the controls. Although I will say that wall jump is fucking tricky to pull off.
Yeah, the wall jump is like the one thing in Super Metroid that like, if you played Super Metroid once, you've probably never done the wall jump except for that one pit that you fall into by accident. Yeah. And once you've played Super Metroid like a million times, you can. That's the way that you can tell, because somebody's like fucking wall jumping all over the place.
Right.
And you can actually get into. You can totally sequence break if you know what you're doing with the wall jump, because it's such a bitch that they know somebody playing for their first time isn't going to be able to just do that.
Right. After about 2 hours, though, I got to say, like I was texting you saying, is there a flashlight in this game?
Yeah, I have no idea what you were talking about.
Right, there's literally two very small areas in that game that like start off kind of well lit, and over the course of like 5-10 seconds, like gradually fade out into blackness.
Were you killing the lightning bugs? Now that I think about it, were you killing the enemies that were lit up? Is that what happened? Because now I'm remembering that there is a really dark room, but you just don't kill the guys carrying the lights.
There are lightning bugs.
Yeah,
there are things carrying lights.
Yeah, there's these like bugs that their heads light up. Yeah,
I was probably doing that.
Yep.
Yeah. I wasn't.
You couldn't tell that they're like flying around in the areas around them, all completely illuminated.
I don't think I made the connection.
Okay.
Wow.
That would explain it, because
I had the flu.
All right. That's fair.
So I get about 2 hours in, and I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what I'm doing, and it was just. Super Metroid assumes that you have a subscription to Nintendo Power. And because there are just like a lot of places, you got to bomb everything.
If you want to find all the secrets, yeah.
But I feel like there were even points where like just to progress, you really had to be like, you had to be pretty... see, and I think you're like sighing because you've been playing this game
I know,
so long.
and so I kind of lack the perspective in this way. Like I beat Super Metroid when I was like 12, so I can't put myself in the mental place of what
if it came out now. I don't think gamers today have that kind of like that ability.
No,
it's just it's a game of its time, and it shines through as that, which is good and bad. I enjoyed the hell out of it. That's what I'm going to say. I did have to look up a guide probably like 5 times to be like, I have no idea what to do.
Well, that's not terrible. I mean, I feel like I probably looked at guides the first couple times I played like Symphony of the Night or something.
What killed me though is that I'm on like hour 10, and the guide that I'm looking up is like an hour and a half YouTube video, like complete playthrough from beginning to end. And I'm like, I should have just followed this guy for the whole time.
Yeah. I've done that once or twice. I've really burned through.
Have you?
Yeah.
This is a game you pull out pretty frequently.
Yeah. This is definitely, although it's one that I didn't own for a very long time. I've only really owned it. I only purchased it as an adult. I borrowed a friend's copy when I was a kid, so I've been doing more replaying of it now than years ago.
Oh, okay. The number of those kind of games that I need to go back and play is staggering.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that there's some kind of canon, and I'm definitely not advising you to go back to like shitty games that have aged poorly.
Yeah.
But like we've talked about that. We've talked about Earthbound.
Yeah, which I've started.
Yeah,
and loved until I don't know, until something came out that I wanted to play. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic game, but I don't know. What's great about playing a Super Nintendo game is that as soon as you're done playing one, you want to play another one.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that. If I could go back to one era and just stick with one system for the rest of my life, that would be it.
Yep.
I'm absolutely in love with the Super Nintendo, and more so now than ever after playing Super Metroid. Stop laughing at me. I'm 35. I can't believe this is the first time and like really not even played through the whole game. This is the first time I've played more than like 5 minutes of it, which is oddly embarrassing.
Yeah,
for people like us.
Yeah, for again, not trying to establish any canon, but for somebody with the breadth and the depth of interest in the hobby, it's weird that Yeah, it's a little weird that you've never played Super Metroid.
Like, I do want to get into more of what we've both been playing, but
it sounds like it was Super Metroid.
that was like a 2-day sitting, pretty much.
Yeah.
That luckily the flu really allows you to get into the depths of a game more than anything else.
Just really makes you feel like you're just gonna die right on your couch.
I will say that,
that you'll be glad when you do.
The problem now is that I will forever associate Super Metroid with the worst headache of my life.
It's funny that you mentioned that. The same friend that I used to borrow Super Metroid from, he
died from the flu.
Yeah, while playing Super Metroid. He's like, "Oh, I'm so thirsty, but I gotta beat." Oh. No, he's still alive. Sorry.
The story sucks.
I know. No, when he was a kid, he was playing Super Metroid and Killer Instinct, and you know when you're a kid sometimes, and you're sick, like. You kind of don't notice it until it's like on you, and you're suddenly just like, oh god, and throwing up everywhere.
Yeah.
So he did that
while playing Super Metroid.
Yeah, and so like every time he'd play Super Metroid for years, he'd start to feel kind of queasy and have to turn it off, and it's like, oh man.
That's why I don't drink Jägermeister anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Before we get into what we've been playing, I do want to blast through a couple of news stories that happened this week. And before we even do that, I wanted to apologize for anyone who's watching this. We're doing the best we can with what we have. We're using a baseline GoPro camera, which by default, strangely enough, uses a fisheye lens, and there's an option in the GoPro software to turn it off in post, like after you recorded, turn it off. And I tried that. And
it would look weird.
It's
right?
like super distorted. Like it doesn't make any sense. So eventually I'll be upgrading and things will look better. But
if we get a lot of viewers, it'll get us more money and we can buy better equipment. Yeah,
more money, like any money.
Yeah.
So stick with us. Hopefully you're here for the content and not for the quality, because if you've seen the videos, you'll know the quality.
Oh, that's what I used to say to all my old girlfriends.
Oh, Mikey. All right, so that's out of the way. All right, what came out this week is awesome. Dying Light came out this week.
I made that joke to people at work about it being a fitness-themed survival horror, and they all laughed.
Yeah, I still don't get it.
Dying Light? Losing weight? Fine.
Oh, now I get it.
Fine.
Like at the opposite of dying fat.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
They laughed.
They don't play video games. Dying Light came out, and heeding your advice, and having been sick and being scared to really blow too much money, I didn't pre-order, which is strange because it's the kind of game that I should love.
Yeah, it sounds like that's... Compared to some of the other stuff that you've pre-ordered, I'm kind of surprised this is the one that you chose to back down on.
Well, it's because of all the other stuff that I pre-ordered that now I needed to step back eventually.
Yeah, it's a simple fiscal reality, not...
Right. This is the $60 I couldn't part with. Unfortunately, I wish I had, because the day it came out, I'm sitting there sick on my couch, wishing that there was a Dying Light in my mailbox. Release day delivery from Amazon.
Because it just happened to come with a 3-day supply of Theraflu.
That would have been awesome. You know what? I should have gotten some Theraflu.
Yep.
Like, I like Theraflu even when I'm not sick. I think it tastes great and it feels great, because lightheaded and everything. And I had a great excuse to drink Theraflu for days.
I know. That's
the
what
apple
they make
cinnamon
it for.
one is so good. Now I'm bummed. I want to get sick again.
Well...
No, I don't.
I don't know. Start licking the fry later or something.
So I didn't. So I'm sitting here on like Tuesday, totally sick, laying in bed, watching Giant Bomb play Dying Light for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, this is kind of like playing it.
Like, you get the controller in your hand. It's like when you're a little kid and like it's a one-player game, and you're just trying to, like, your buddy's playing, and you're trying to get with the moment,
So. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was doing without the controller. But I was like, this is, at least if I die, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And I was dying because I was like, because it looked like finally a proper sequel to Dead Island, which one of my most underrated games of all time, I think, is Dead Island. I don't think anyone enjoyed it nearly as much as I did, but I couldn't get enough. I wanted that game to go on forever. I wanted to live in that world. So Dying Light kind of picks off where that left off, and it gives you more like parkour abilities to really be able to like get around the environment. So traveling is a lot more fun. And basically it's like Dead Island 2.
Huh.
So, but now here's my dilemma. The game's out. There's no point in spending $60 on it anymore. It's going to drop down to $40 in like a month.
Just borrow it from the library.
I don't go to libraries.
Maybe you should.
Oh, yeah. Plug.
Yeah.
Stop plugging it.
Come to the libraries, kids. Reading's cool.
All right, so Dying Light's out.
Cool.
It actually, it's getting good reviews. It's not just me this time.
I know. That's compared to about the last half dozen or so games that you've...
Yeah. This is also the strange one where the PS3 and 360 versions got canceled like a month ago. Like
That's weird.
Like it took them like right when the game's going gold. That's when they figure out it didn't really work. So
they just open the door to the offices of the people working on that, and they're all just dead. Oops. Did anyone remember to feed Department G? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, canceled the paychecks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really strange that's when they canceled it. Whatever.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
This one's interesting. So Konami has teased Metal Gear Rising 2 for the PlayStation 4. It's literally not even a full logo. It's just the number 2.
It's half the logo. There's a guy, you see a guy like painting it in. Hold up, I'm almost done.
Like camera cuts away.
Yeah.
So it's just the number 2 in that font. And that was it. It was like in the middle of some other videos going on, and that's all they've done. And was anyone clamoring for this? Like I know Metal Gear fans are rabid.
It reviewed super well.
It did.
It's it's platinum. It's Metal Gear.
So you know what's I was looking back when I was editing the last podcast. We were talking about this, and I was like, leading up to the release, it looked like it was going to be kind of shaky.
Yeah.
But that's not really what the story was. It kind of clicked when I was listening to us talk ad nauseum. And what it was, didn't it change developers midway through the development process? It was Konami proper, I think, for a while, and then that's when they brought in Platinum like halfway through, and were like, fix this. I'm pretty sure that's what happened, and that's why I was like, this isn't going to be good at all.
Well, if you're going to, usually midstream developer switch is a pretty bad sign. But if you're going to bring in anybody, Platinum, maybe Treasure would be kind of the people that you'd turn to.
Right.
Especially if you're Konami, you know?
Or Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
Like, Naughty Dog's not known for Twitch action games, but I think they could probably save just about anything.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Oh, poor Sega.
Did you hear that from somewhere else?
No, I just came up with
That's
that.
Awesome.
Copyright.
Yeah.
So Sega is moving, downsizing, and restructuring.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that specific story, but that's been that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, they lost 300 employees in Japan.
Earthquake.
Well, they
that's actually really awful.
Right?
That's sorry, everybody.
Yeah, now our camera's going to fall again. Actually, this is the 300 employees were offered voluntary early retirement. So
I mean,
right?
Yeah, if you're going to go.
Thank you, Sega.
Yeah.
But now the U.S. Department is doing something similar. They're not sure how many people they're losing, but the new focus is going to be on digital and PC gaming. And it's, usually I feel so bad for companies like this, and of course I do. Like Sega was such an influential part of gaming past, but I mean, it seems like they just screwed up at every single turn possible over the last decade.
Yeah.
Or before even.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel like a lot of this is just they're kind of paying for decisions that were made long, long ago. I mean, some of the ways that they've handled their properties have not been great, but even stuff like, everyone bitches about all the shitty Sonic games that have been coming out, but like those games sell pretty well compared to, say, like your Yakuza or your Valkyria
Chronicles. No excuse to make it a crappy game.
No.
What's the newest one? Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric. I mean, that was just panned universally. Like, I mean, just awful.
Somebody stole that from work, and I'm just like, I'm not replacing that. Right. Like, I just bought it for work, and I'm no, we're not getting another copy of that.
Yeah, who needs it? It's and I was even like. not that I want to get back into Sonic games, but I was doing some research, looking back to see like what good Sonic games there were. You know, maybe like on the Wii or whatever, because there was a ton of them for that. Yeah. And really, there's like one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Sonic Colors. And,
that was it.
And maybe Sonic Generations, depending on who you ask.
Oh, man, I played the demo of that, and that pissed me off.
Was it shitty?
Oh, I hated it. And then Sonic Episode 4, Sonic 4, Episode 1, which was supposed to be like the return to 2D. Like, it didn't even control like a Sonic game.
Yeah, I watched some videos of that, and they had it compared to like the older Sonic games. And not that I've ever been a huge fan of the older Sonic games, but I can definitely see why it would bother people that were, because it was
didn't
wrong.
Make any
it was
sense.
Off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then and Sonic in the Black Knight.
Black Knight, Sonic in the Secret Rings. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh my god, yeah. 06, Sonic 06, I think they call it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like game after game after game, just awful. But and you know, here's the problem. Sonic Adventure, and please don't hate me, 1 and 2, I don't think were good games. Like, not even remotely close to good games. They showed off the power of the Dreamcast hardware, and everything else was kind of broken. And they were like, well, these things sold like crazy. This is what people want. Nope.
Yeah, Sonic is kind of one of the 2D mascots that never really made the transition to 3D.
True.
Except he's been not making that transition for like 15 years.
It's so true.
Like,
you know what my favorite 3D Sonic game is?
I don't know.
Okay, if you're not going to get it, no one's getting it.
That weird fighting game, or the
Sonic the Fighters?
Yeah.
No. Sonic Jam. It's the Saturn compilation of the Genesis games.
Yeah.
But the World Hub is like a 3D Sonic game. You run around like this is good. Like it seemed like they were onto something. Like that's like the leftovers of Sonic Extreme or something.
Yeah, wasn't that? Now that you mention that, I think that was kind of the remains.
I watched like a 3-hour documentary on YouTube about the whole story of Sonic Extreme on the Saturn. It's worth watching because they have like rare video footage of the game in development. It was horrible.
When you first said that, I was like, that can't exist. And then I suddenly pictured you sitting there delirious on your couch, like just watching hours and hours of Keyboard Cat videos, and you're like, this Sonic is amazing.
Totally. So obviously, we feel awful for anybody at Sega.
Yeah, I mean, we're joking about it, but getting laid off sucks.
It definitely sucks, and it's and like I said, they were such an influential part of my childhood, and still some of my favorite video game systems of all time. Yeah,
Sega is kind of like a beloved childhood dog that just is in those last stages of life and just is a mess. Like, you see it kind of shuffle into the room awkwardly, and you're like, "Hey, Buster!" And then he just pisses everywhere, and you're like, "What are you do? Get out of here! No!" You know, you still love him, but you're like, he can't be indoors.
Yeah, you nailed it. Sega can't be indoors.
No.
All right, moving on. We got to get through this.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, God.
This is just ridiculous. I'm just saying it because I think it's silly. Ouya. You know, the little $100 Android-based video game console, which came out like in, I think, 2011. I could be wrong on that. It's like I thought was just dying a slow death.
Yeah.
It just got $10 million in funding from a Chinese investor.
From somebody who doesn't watch the news very well.
Well, it's a Chinese investor, Alibaba. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Oh, Alibaba. That's that huge... That's like the huge their auction site, their like shopping center. Yeah, that's
the company itself has their own like set top box.
Yeah,
and I guess they want to like integrate Ouya into it. So I think they want to almost absorb Ouya.
That's a lot less of a joke than it sounded like when you started. Alibaba's a pretty big deal.
Okay, I'd never heard of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not. Then that's not just because you don't watch the news like that. Yeah. They're a little. You don't hear about them a lot.
I watched The Daily Show. That counts.
Yeah, but you don't hear about them a lot in the West, but they're a pretty big deal. They're actually tied up with Yahoo is separating now. They were attached to Yahoo for a while, but now they're kind of splintering off into separate groups. Yeah, that's wild.
So that's happening. The next one, though, I think you might actually care about, and you probably know it already. The Smash Brothers, the Smash Brothers on Wii U is getting a big update.
I didn't hear about that
one.
Oh,
well then
really?
Here we go.
Cool.
It adds 15 new 8-player stages.
Holy shit!
Right? I guess 8-player stages were so popular that Nintendo felt like they had to. And there was no mention of price. It just sounded like it's a free download.
Wow.
Which I think Nintendo's awesome about these things. Mario Kart 8 for relatively cheap. I think it was like $15. It's like double the size of the game.
Wow.
It was awesome. So I think Nintendo might be the only developer out there doing DLC right.
You know, I know in the past we've all made fun of Nintendo for not jumping into the DLC thing.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why. They were just waiting and they wanted to get it absolutely right. Sorry, Nintendo. I take it all back.
The Wii U sales are up as well.
Good.
Yeah, I mean not crazy, but I mean, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully they can sustain life. Speaking of ending life support, Sony is ending Vita support, not for games, but for YouTube.
Oh.
Maps. As if you were using your Vita for maps.
Yeah.
And some Near functions. Now, if you've ever started up your Near app.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing never made sense from the get-go. Like, I used it at first. It was supposed to be like the Street Pass on the 3DS.
Okay.
On the DS. And it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you can sort of see where people are that are also playing Vita, but, like, they're leaving presents for you and you're picking them up and down. It just never clicked with me. Like, it never made any sense. And anyone I ever asked about it didn't know what it meant either. So I basically just kept Near off. I'm hoping that we can now delete Maps, because it's just one of those icons that kind of gets thrown into a junk folder. Fucking Maps. It's a video game machine. It's not a good sign though.
No. Well, I mean, not a good sign is kind of the Vita's subtitle at this point. Like, you know,
you kind of have to know what you're getting into at this point,
which is kind of baffling to me, because I feel like it's gotten much more exposure than the PSP, and that staggered on for quite a while, you know?
The PSP was huge in Japan.
That's true, yeah.
This really hasn't gotten a foothold anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a shame, but you know what? It's every time I turn around, there's like a new NIS game like coming out, and it's like just
Nipponiji knows where to tie its ship.
Yep, it's oddly doesn't do. I mean, if you like Japanese games, there's no sign of this slowing down.
Yeah.
So yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Let's see. Just want to kind of make sure I didn't miss anything here. Nope, that was it. All right, good. So I think you have a lot to say about what you've been playing this week.
Yes, yeah, and actually the Vita, that's a good segue. You know, speaking of the Vita, so I just wrapped up Danganronpa last night, the first one.
That's good. I didn't know you finished it.
Yeah, well, it just finished. I stayed up kind of late and polished it off. Man, I don't even know what the deal is with this game. I meant to look some stuff up too before coming over here, but oh well, I'll wing it. Yeah, this is a weird game. I mean, it had been pitched as like a kind of Persona school adventure meets Phoenix Wright style, murder mystery. And I'm like, cool, I love both those games. Let's do this. It is, in a way, those kind of games. But it is also, I feel like, it's very much the case of the parts don't make the whole, it comes together very differently. I would definitely not unequivocally recommend this game to anybody that's a big fan of the other two. And it really comes down to an issue of tone and kind of the weird way that the game's tone just seesaws constantly. I guess first off, you can very, very definitely tell that it's a product of the same people that made 999 and Zero Escape, because it's the same. I mean, it almost feels like a sequel to those games in a way, or some kind of weird spin-off. It's that same. You've got a bunch of people locked into a small area by some kind of mystery creature. That seems to be a thing with Japanese games lately. Quasi-adorable but murderous creatures locking small groups of people into...
Works for me.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, there's the Monokuma from Danganronpa. There's the Zero the Rabbit from Zero Escape. You've got, what's his name, Hogmeister from Pink Sweets. Or not Pink Sweet. What is that? Sweet Fuse.
Sweet Fuse.
Yeah, Pink Sweet's the shooter. And, everyone having to kind of puzzle out what happened, how they got there. Yeah. There's usually some kind of amnesia, usually some sort of political issues and larger philosophical things, some kind of hard sci-fi elements. And they've just decided to kind of factor in, and that's all fine. That works for me. I do that. And I love the Phoenix Wright stuff. I love the murder mystery kind of thing. I'm not sure how I feel about putting those things together, though. Because part of the problem, or part of the thing with the Phoenix Wright games is, as you're playing them, when you're winning a case, you usually feel good about it. Like you're exposing somebody. With a handful of exceptions, the murderers in the Phoenix Wright games are all rotten people. They murdered for greed. They murdered to protect themselves from embarrassment. They murdered in a raid. They're not good people, and you feel good about getting rid of them. When Danganronpa started and you meet the whole cast, my first thought was just like, how the fuck is this gonna work? Because if you've got, first of all, you meet all of the characters and you're kind of pushed together right from the get-go. Like, we have to work together to get out of this. And none of them seem like nightmare human. Well, most of them don't seem like nightmare human beings. And you're also thinking, like, well, they can't just have the jerks be murderers. Otherwise, that's going to be a giveaway right from the beginning. Yeah. I don't think I ever felt good about winning a case in Danganronpa.
Really?
Most of the murders were motivated by fear or confusion or just...
But doesn't this make it more, I don't know, I don't want to say realistic, but less cut and dry than, say, like an Ace Attorney game?
Absolutely. It also makes it super depressing.
Oh, yeah.
And you're also realizing as you go along, each chapter, there's a victim and a murderer. You only start with 15 people, and if they want to spice things up a little bit, like have a case where there's a double murder or something, like, you're running out of characters really fast. Yeah. Like, by about the midpoint of the game, I was like, where is this gonna go? Like, if there's 3 people left and one of them gets murdered, who was it? Who was it that did that? And they. Sorry, we were gonna say I'm kind of monologuing here.
I kind of want to get an idea here, though, of like how many game hours you put into this. Because I know you exhausted 999 in Virtue's Last Reward.
I played
you played through all the endings and everything.
Yeah.
Is this a single playthrough game?
Yeah, there's not. I mean, there's extra stuff. I think there might be like 1 or 2 alternate paths you can take, but it's pretty much a straight line as opposed to the winding narrow. Like 999 and Virtue's Last Reward were all about like I don't even think you could finish that in one playthrough if you really you had to lose and go back with some of the information. This is very much a more straightforward thing. It plays more like a Phoenix Wright, but with the themes of a 999, and that's kind of what it kind of throws me a little bit. Like,
so what are we talking hour wise here?
I'm gonna say guesstimate like 15 to 20. It was a longish. It was a little on the
totally
longish
manageable
side.
Though, especially knowing it's a one playthrough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's there's some extra stuff that you unlock. Like I could see maybe certain a second playthrough being worthwhile to find some of the little secrets and things, but it's not.
So it was super depressing.
Yeah, it really was. It was really depressing.
And you own the sequel.
I do, yeah.
And are you going to jump right into that or give it some time?
I think if I don't, it's something that I probably won't go back to. Like, I think I gotta just kind of shotgun the sequel.
Yeah.
Because I should say with all of this, I'm not criticizing its quality as a game.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why it received the accolades it did. I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to make of this game. It did not make me feel so great.
Yeah.
And you get near the end and it's like, wow, this is the crew that I'm wrapping this up with. Like, this is not really how I expected this to all go down.
I'm intrigued because I've played through the prologue and saw Monokuma speak for the first time and like really I should be like enraptured in the game right now, and not that I'm not into it, but I worry about things too much when I start a game. Like with Super Metroid, I was like, well, I don't know, like I'm gonna end up getting too far without like the certain power up, so I'm scared to even start it at all. With Danganronpa, I've got a bad memory, so I'm talking to 15 different people trying.
Well,
to
there's not 15 for very long.
but I'm testing myself constantly, being like, okay, that's the person who's really good at this. That's the person who's really good at this, and I've already foregone the idea of trying to remember anyone's name because they're all Japanese names, and it's like I have one Japanese friend.
They give them all nicknames. So.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like other than like the ultimate blah blah blah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They all have like nicknames by the end of it. Yeah. There are abbreviations, anyways, that are a little bit easier to digest.
All right. I'm gonna get lost. Somebody's gonna die. I'm not gonna know who it was. I'm like, I'm already freaking out. Nothing's happened.
Yeah. I mean I think it's Spike that made all the Spike and Chunsoft.
Yep.
That made the 999 and its sequel, and you do have to pay attention. I mean, if you're not, this is not. Although I will actually say it's a lot easier than any of those games. I definitely burned through that. Here we go, this fucking thing
it's
again.
Fine.
It's fine. All right, fine.
Watching.
It's definitely easier than any of the 999 or Zero Escape, and actually I would say even easier than Phoenix Wright. I very rarely came close to ever like losing cases or anything like that, and I think the fact might be I had just been trained by those other games to just pay attention a lot more. Yeah. Although with Phoenix Wright, you have a lot more time to kind of go over your notes. Like that game does a much better job of keeping really good track of everything that you need to remember for the to make progress. So it's hard to get stuck where because you can replay things in 999, it lets you screw up more. Yeah, and this game kind of has a little bit more of that. If you're not paying attention, you're going to miss out on things.
Okay.
So you do kind of have to pay attention, but it's pretty. If you pay attention, it seemed pretty easy too. None of the cases really required the kind of crazy leaps of logic that Phoenix Wright sometimes did.
Like I got to say, not having gotten into the game, obviously, as far as you have, but for the brief maybe hour and a half I played, it was I'm in love with the visual style.
Yeah,
I think it's a beautiful game.
Yeah,
it was originally a PSP game that they. They must have done some upgrading.
Yeah, it feels a little up-resed. I think a PSP game wouldn't look quite this crisp. But
yeah, it's just like I definitely want to spend more time with it, man. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and I don't get so down like you do. Like I played through The Last of Us, and at the end I was like, I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, and 999 and Zero Escape had some pretty dark moments too. Yeah. But the fact that you're kind of in this like time loop almost in those games that you could go back and redo things took a lot of the edge off. So
Gotcha.
A lot of that game was about reaching the end without any of those awful things happening. So then like that would be, the canonical storyline.
Gotcha.
Where this, bad stuff happens and then more bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
Like it's not great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Did you find time in your week for anything else, or was
I played my much beloved Saints Row expansion pack.
Yes,
Get Out of Hell, which was
moving on.
Yeah. See, again, you'll play all these like shitty games, but you won't play a great open world game.
Just to remind you, the shitty games that I'm playing. Watch the next episode of Backlogged because. With Backlogged, I was like, this is a great excuse to play Gunman's Proof.
Oh, okay. That's not a shitty game.
No, it's
pretty good.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of a more bare bones than I expected it to be. But then I was like, well, what game am I going to play next? And I was like, I started putting too much thought into it. And I was like, just pick a game that you've been wanting to play from the backlog. It doesn't need to be good.
Oh. There goes the camera.
Right. It doesn't need to be good. It's just something I want to play, and if it's bad, then it's bad. I'm not even going to tell you what I'm playing on the air. I'm going to have it be a surprise.
Oh, it's a secret
for the next episode of Backlog.
No spoilers.
It'll go up this week. I'm blasting through it, and it's painful as hell. It's very exciting.
Yeesh. Yikes. Yeah.
But Gunman's Proof was awesome, man. I had a lot of fun with that game, and the only thing I think I screwed up on when I was doing video capturing for it, I stopped the video capture like an hour and a half in, and then I played through the rest of the game. So I didn't capture any video for flamethrowers and bazookas and all of the cool weapons. I'm talking about them, and I'm just shooting this little pistol. Like, man, maybe I should have captured some more video.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, I think using a LNR to strafe and stuff, I was like, wow, this is not super complex for the Super Nintendo, but control-wise, it was spot on.
Yeah, it's one of the few games that has done the Zelda formula, but done it different. It took Zelda, but it doesn't just feel like a Zelda clone.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Zelda at all. And of course, when you first started up, the first thing you think is, oh, Jesus. Did they take these trees out of Link to the Past?
Yeah, I mean, visually, it's definitely got a kind of Link to the Past meets Earthbound look to it.
Yeah. All right, so I don't want to talk about Saints Row.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's good, though. Anybody that liked the other games should definitely play it.
One thing I definitely want to say is that when I was doing video capturing for the last podcast, I ran out and picked up Enter the Matrix for GameCube, and I had to go to our favorite store, That's Entertainment, on Park Avenue.
They should start sponsoring us for the amount of times we talk them up.
Yeah, that's the goal. We'll make it happen eventually. So I'm totally placing an eBay auction
awesome.
bid while we're doing
Very
this.
professional.
Very professional. All right, we'll just keep that up there. So I ran out to That's Entertainment to pick up that game and coincidentally a couple other games that I happened to grab while I was there.
Of course, you're there.
Yeah, well, totally. But I had to do it right before work. I just had to run and go grab the game so I could take care of it. And so I get to work and I've got all these games with me. And my buddy's like, "What do you have?" And I'm like, I showed him. He goes, "Oh man, Enter the Matrix." When that game came out, it was so much fun. My buddy and I played the hell out of that game. And I was like, no. I'm like, look at the box. Maybe it'll bring back some memories. And he's like, no, this is the game. This is the game. And I was like, no, this can't be the game that you loved. It's horrible. We just spent like a half an hour talking about how bad it was. And he was like, no. He's like, you go home and play this game. And tell me what you think. I'm like, I got to say, little contrarian corner right now. It's not a great game, but it's fun. It's fun. It's janky as hell. The graphics are all over the place. But man, it's the first game that did bullet time, and you're doing all these crazy tricks in the air.
Didn't Max Payne do bullet time first?
Oh, was that first?
I think so.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But I mean, the movie did it before Max Payne.
That's true. Yeah.
So we'll get at that.
Yeah.
And so I'm playing through it. I'm doing everything. I'm like, I could totally sit down with this game and maybe play it from start to finish. It's, like I said, not good, but fun.
How far did you get? Did you get to where you fight the agents?
I got like half an hour in it.
Yeah. See, in the beginning, it's okay. When you're just fighting the security guards and stuff. But then when the fight, because that was part of the
fun was sneaking up behind the security guards and just strangling them.
Yeah. Which is fine. Yeah, it's janky, but it's playable.
Yeah.
Then when you start to get to the fights that like require some technical skills, all downhill.
Really?
Yeah, because the whole point is, in the Matrix, the agents were like, the supervillains. The average guy on the street couldn't, hold their own against them. And even in the movies, the only one who ever, defeats an agent is Neo, because he's God
Neo.
or whatever. Yeah. And that's like a big deal. So whenever you fight agents, you have to just run away, and they just tear you apart.
Wow.
And it sucks.
Well, so the other thing about this is that we were talking about this game probably being like contributing greatly to the demise of Shiny. There was a sequel.
Was it The Path of Neo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that was a direct... Shiny made that?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that didn't review well either.
No,
but I don't remember it.
I think I want to say slightly better than the first one.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite the train wreck that the first one was.
But I was surprised to be
I mean, that doesn't... I knew that game existed. I didn't realize that Shiny made it as well. But it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, The Matrix was, and kind of still is, a pretty large, sci-fi property.
You got to figure Into the Matrix sold like crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. No more about that. All right. Mike, we've got a topic this week.
Yeah, I feel like this always kind of ends up being our topic.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I think
we're good at it, kind of.
Oh, I'm not. I barely wrote anything down.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be a good podcast.
Yeah, I didn't know you were coming today.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. To all of you.
There's like a guy in the other room, like just waiting for you to come back. Oop. Is there?
Just had to check. So I mean, it's kind of a vague topic, but we wanted to talk about some obscure games this week, and so I looked up the definition of obscure because I was like,
you're just going to talk about those two games.
Well, here's the thing. I was starting to think to myself. I got two in my head about this topic. I was like, obscure games, like games that people don't know about, or obscure games like weird, like quirky, obscure games. And so I looked up the definition of obscure just to make sure I was on the same page as you. And first definition is not clear or plain. Okay. And the second one was far from public notice. So I was like, both of them kind of... So I was kind of going both ways. They can be kind of weird, quirky, not plain, not clear games, or they can just be games that no one talks about. That said, why don't you tell us about your first obscure game?
See, it would have been really funny if then we just talked about Obscure, the game.
That was going to be on my list. And
why? That was so perfect. Why would you have taken that off?
Because, I don't know.
Would have been a hilarious bit.
Yeah, really?
Well,
I think so.
I mean...
My definition of hilarious is different than yours. Have you played Obscure?
No, it's one of those games that I feel like we had talked about it. Like, because it's co-op, right? Yeah,
it can be.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those games that I would never make any headway with on my own.
Yep.
But if I played it with somebody else that was jazzed to play it, I could go through that whole thing.
I did play it with somebody else, and it ruined our relationship.
All right, I take it back then.
Yeah. Well, we were dating.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
no.
The days.
Yeah.
So your first game, not obscure. I mean, obscure game, but not the. I'm gonna go.
That's all right. You're gonna go. You just go in the other room and shut the door.
Yeah. I'm actually just gonna go to the fold-out couch.
Yeah, nice.
I'll just be on the other side of that. What's your first game like?
So, I figured I'd start with probably the most obscure, rarely heard of game that I could think of. That's also good.
Okay.
So I picked Night Slashers, which is an old arcade game, 1993.
Okay.
And it's, came out kind of in the heyday of the arcade brawler, which has long been one of my favorite genres, the old walk right and just punch things until there's nothing left to punch.
Pick up turkeys for health.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right out of a garbage can.
Gotta destroy the garbage can to find it, though.
They should make like a parody one of those where like you're eating food out of the trash and you get like salmonella.
Nice. That's fantastic.
So Night Slashers is a fairly standard brawler from a gameplay perspective, but the cool thing about it is it's like a B monster movie take on a brawler, which you never really see. I mean, there was like Splatterhouse, but that was a little different. I mean, Splatterhouse was more of a gory R-rated kind of horror movie, and Night Slashers is pretty gory too. But the monsters that you're fighting are all kind of like your standard. What was called the studio that made all those big monster movies? Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's the big, sorry.
It's right here. You're gonna see. Yeah, I'm gonna edit it in.
You're gonna edit it in, but like it's you talking, but my mouth is moving. You just dub it in.
It's just gonna be a big wall of text.
Yeah, yeah. But and I know I'm going to remember it right after we sign off. But
it was like monster movies like Frankenstein.
Yeah. What was that studio that did all of those? Universal. There we go. The Universal monster movies. So yeah, like the bosses are like Frankenstein's monster and the vampire. The enemies that you're fighting are like zombies.
Is it like tongue in cheek? Is it like kind of like?
Yeah, I mean it plays it straight, but it's it's a brawler. It's got goofiness. Your special move like pops out a cross and just liquefies every enemy on screen. It's very, it is tongue in cheek in that sense.
Now, who developed it? I should ask you this.
It was Data East.
Okay.
Which is kind of a weird. Yeah. Data East is one of those companies that I can't ever quite wrap my head around. They did a lot of just weird random stuff.
Yeah.
But Night Slashers is great. The levels are most, and it's long too. But the levels themselves are pretty quick. You're kind of tearing through things pretty fast. But it almost plays kind of like the Alien versus Predator brawler, in that the screen is always just packed. You're constantly surrounded. I mean, there's a ton of enemies on screen.
Just never got a home port?
No. And I don't even think it got a U.S. release. I think it was like.
So strange when a company like Data East, who actually brings games home, doesn't make a home port or something.
This guy. I mean, I only heard about this game, and I'm a pretty big aficionado of 2D arcade brawlers.
Mm-hmm.
I only heard about this game a couple of years ago, so it got very, very limited distribution. Very obscure. And it's great though. It's a lot of fun. It's got a real kind of campy feel to it, and it's that. Compared to say Final Fight, where you'll have guys on screen, but you're usually kind of fighting, fending off like 3, maybe 4 guys, as opposed to like Alien versus Predator, where there could be like 10 to 12 enemies just pouring in. This is kind of more of that. There's zombies everywhere.
It's so funny. I haven't thought about the Alien versus Predator beat 'em up in a long time.
Oh, I think about it every day.
I when I think of Alien versus Predator, I know there was like some like strategy game that came out, but then
the PC game, the first-person shooters were the ones that were pretty popular.
Yeah, and that's basically the only reason I bought a Jaguar.
Yeah, and there was an SNES Alien vs. Predator brawler that was really shitty.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
I'll keep that.
Capcom made the arcade one though, so
yeah. Can't go wrong with Capcom brawlers.
Nope. So yeah, this is a great one. If you were a fan of that and you like kind of horror movies and campy, it's got a a little bit of like a Darkstalkers vibe to it.
I was going to ask that's why I asked who made the game, because I was wondering
if it was Capcom.
Yeah.
No. Capcom was Darkstalkers was Capcom.
That's right.
Yeah, Darkstalkers are weird, aren't they? There hasn't been a new Darkstalkers game in like a million years, but they still come up all that. Like Capcom always uses those characters in their like in their crossover things constantly, and it's like everybody knows those characters are very much in the public eye.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. But no Mega Man Legends.
No.
All right. Well, let me bring up one that I think is worth noting. And this is actually the same developer as one of your upcoming ones. I hope I pronounced this correctly. It's Galarians or Galarian.
Oh yeah.
It's a PlayStation 1 game by Polygon Magic. It's
came out. What was I talking about? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I was able.
That's why I didn't leave my house till I found my notebook.
Good call. Good call. I did a little research on your games just to make sure I wasn't completely in the dark.
All right.
So this came out in 2000, March 29th, 2000, and it is clearly a Resident Evil ripoff. You get the static 2D backgrounds, you get the 3D character models, but there are no guns in this game.
Really?
Yeah, you use what do they call them? There's a different name for them, I think, in the game, but it's psychokinetic powers. Basically, you wake up in this hospital. You're this boy named Bryan, and he's got no memory, per every other game in the world. But as you're trying to escape from the hospital, like not security guards, but like doctors and researchers are walking toward you, being like, hey, and you just lose it, and they blow up in a big burst of blood, and you're like, this game is fucking awesome. And so the whole game kind of has that vibe. It's 4 discs, and back in the day that was a big deal. But it's just filled with a lot of cinemas, a lot of storytelling. It's a very, very strange story. But the settings are just all over the place. The hospital, you have to go to your childhood home, I believe. And there's just all these things going on, and the narrative is pretty good. So I was a huge fan of this game. I think it actually surpasses Resident Evil in so many different ways. And it never really got the love that it deserved. I want to make sure I don't miss anything here.
Is it the tank controls?
It is tank controls. But you know what, man? It's I feel like those are a tough barrier to entry for 20 minutes. And then you get used to them and you're right into the game. It's for me this is my favorite Resident Evil ripoff. Now, I was begging for a sequel for this game forever. I was like, come on, where's the love? Where's the Galarian love? And they gave us one.
Yeah, there was one
on PlayStation 2, February of 2003. Is Galarian's Ash. Wow, man, not good at all. Not good.
That's too bad.
They started using 3D graphics, and when they did the 3D backgrounds, they just didn't care about variety. The first game had so much variety. Everywhere you went was totally different than the last location.
And they used the stills. They used the first game used stills Resident Evil.
Yeah, the pre-rendered backgrounds.
Yes.
And this one was just all 3D, and it was just boring. It was a lot of gray corridors.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not exciting. I'm placing a bid right now. I'm the highest bidder. Yep, we'll see. Wait, 2, 1.
Oh, it's a bunch of Dreamcast games.
Yeah, and I didn't win.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't think I won. This app is so weird sometimes. Holy crap. It went from $60 to $250 in a second. We've talked about this before. The only way you can get deals on eBay is when a lister sells something they don't know that they have.
Yeah.
So this guy put up an auction for a Dreamcast lot, games and system. The system didn't even have a power cord, and it was just games. He goes, and it's one picture of just
yeah.
And Giga Wing 2 was in there.
Oh, yeah.
And so for days there were no bids.
Is that a $200 game at this point?
$150. Wow. Yeah. And so I was if I can get the whole thing for $150, then I'm way ahead of the game. Obviously there were other people watching it. I don't feel bad about missing out on that one. So the thing is I definitely played through the entire first Galarian game, and I loved it, and I would definitely go back and play it again. But when I was doing research for this, it made me really want to give the second game, Ash, another chance. It's made by the same developer. It was Polygon Magic, but I want to say... Oh, man, I hate when I don't take the proper notes.
We're so close. We were almost prepared.
Yeah, it's I want to say, and I'll edit this later if it's wrong, but I want to say that
it just cuts to you standing directly facing the camera, just saying that.
It's just going to be text over saying, this is all wrong.
Yeah.
Did you see the last episode?
I did.
When I was Gray Matter made Call of Duty, and it was
nope.
not that Gray Matter. It was.
I can see how you would make that mistake, though.
Well, it was the internet that made that mistake, and I copied the research from somebody else who screwed up. I think this was ex-Human developers. And if you know Human, they
did
Clock Tower
yes.
games. and I want to say SOS, which is that
that weird
SNES adventure
Titanic escape game.
Yeah, which I actually picked up recently. I'm excited to play.
Yeah, it looks pretty decent. That's kind of a quirky.
So I could be wrong. It might not be human, but that's what I think it is. It's your turn.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about Polygon Magic, there we go. We can talk about the other one. This one I think definitely gets a little more attention than Night Slashers. But Incredible Crisis, which is a game that two of my friends impulse bought when we were in college. It was like $10 at GameStop, and they split it. And man, am I glad they did, because it's amazing. It boils down to basically a mini game collection, and a lot of it is just kind of button mashing. But it's the way that everything comes together. And the plot of it is essentially just like everyone in this family wants to get home in time for grandma's birthday. Like, that's it.
Yep.
But the specifics of how that plays out involves like bank robbers and terrorists and like alien attacks, and like
it's so good.
It's crazy. Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, outside of, there's a few sticking points where I feel like, there's a game that it is just like button mashing, and you really have, I mean, this is like more than Metal Gear Solid torture scene kind of button mashing. It's very easy to lose a game just because you're tired. And there should never be a video game that's a cause of loss. But and you can only save every like 3 or 4 games, so if you mess up on the last one, you are redoing some stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating insanity. I mean, it's all of the good things about like slapstick Japanese comedy, and I think I think even the Japanese themselves would admit that their comedy can be kind of hit or miss, and is often a very acquired taste. Mm-hmm. But they do it right in this instance. It's great. I mean, there's scenes where you're like piloting a fighter jet and trying to shoot a giant teddy bear that's rampaging through the city like kaiju style.
This brings back great memories.
Yeah. I
actually went to see if I still had this in my collection, because it's a game I've owned like at least twice in my life.
Yeah,
and I don't.
Bummer.
It's like, what happened?
Yeah, and it's not super expensive either.
No, I'm sure.
I mean, it is a cult classic, but it's one that hasn't really shot up in price. You know. Yeah. There's the infamous back rub scene, which apparently in the original Japanese version was oral sex. Which,
wasn't it just the sound effects that?
Yeah, were you don't see anything. Right. You never see anything. There's no like humping motion. It's not like.
But it was still toned down for the U.S. audience.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little disturbing too, because the husband, who's kind of the main character, it basically then implies that he just kind of casually cheated on his wife, and it's just never brought up again.
So I think it was probably this game and Parappa the Rapper that made me, like, that really opened my eyes. Like, I'm a huge fan of Electronic Gaming Monthly. Like, that was what I read in my childhood. That's what I still read.
It's still next to your toilet. There's like 20 of them
20 issues like just stacked up in front of my toilet. Like, always good toilet reading. But so I always knew about these like weirder Japanese games, and like the likelihood of them coming, to the West was not very likely for the most part. But it was really in the PlayStation 1 era when we started getting some of these games like Parappa and Incredible Crisis, where I really opened my eyes and was just like, there's a shit ton of craziness going on in Japan.
Yeah.
And we're only seeing like small drop in the bucket.
That's an analogy.
All right,
there you go. That's a saying. Go for it.
So that's when my eyes were really open. I was like at the right age, and I was looking to import games, and I had modded my PlayStation. Incredible Crisis was a big eye opener.
Yeah. I mean, that PlayStation era was a pretty great time to be a gamer, because CDs were cheap, and development. As much as I feel like the move to 3D cost us a lot in the abandonment of 2D, it was cheaper than paying a ton of people to do a ton of intricate sprite work,
Right.
and so you could get some more dynamic things. And it kind of depresses me now when you look at like the Japanese development landscape and you see, just a decade ago all of the like awesome stuff that was coming out, and it's like what happened to all of that? Where are all those like weird quirky games? And I mean, you had stuff like that earlier too. There's some weird shit on like the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo too, but the PlayStation era, I think, was when it hit the ubiquity and the price point where game developers could really take some nutty risks.
Because it even faded as soon as the PlayStation 2 era.
Yeah.
Like we got things like Katamari Damacy, but it's just not quite as much as we did
not
on PS1.
To the volume. Yeah.
There was so much on the PS1. Mike, I want you to go again because I don't have as many games, and could you skip an arcade game?
Okay.
Because I know
I wasn't really going in order. I was just kind of seeing what.
No, I don't have an order. I just don't have anything to say about the other arcade
games. Well, then I'll bring up one that I think we've talked about before. You and I personally.
Yeah.
So back in the day on the TurboGrafx, there was a pair of games that kind of went on to become cult classics. And they were Alien's Crush and Devil's Crush, the two pinball games, which still stand among pinball games as really, kind of the platonic ideal of console pinball games.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know. I guess they probably got Wii Virtual Console releases. I think, didn't they?
I want to say yes.
At least Aliens Crush did. I'm almost positive on that one.
Yeah, and I could be wrong. They might even be available for like on the PlayStation.
Yeah. No, I know
something.
they did some TurboGrafx, so they've been ported around, but no real no follow ups, no compilations. But what a lot of people who love those games didn't realize is there actually was a third one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Super Famicom, Japanese Super Nintendo exclusive, and it was great. I would think it's the best of the three. Called Jockey Crush, developed by the same people, the Naxat Soft and Compile, and it's great. Where Aliens Crush took a sort of Geiger-esque, space horror vibe. Devil's Crush had like a medieval dark fantasy feel to it. Jockey Crush takes a traditional Japanese mythology feel to it. So there's lots of like ogres and oni and devils and the long thin dragons. And it basically just goes to town like that. And it's got the music is phenomenal. I think there's really only 2 songs, but they're really good ones.
Yeah, they are absolutely.
And they're lengthy, so you're not getting bored as they loop endlessly. And it's a tough game too, but it's great. It's the same kind of just knocking the pinball around, blowing up monsters and demons, and it's very viscerally satisfying. And I think it's gotten a little bit more attention in recent years. Like pretty much everything else I ever talk about, whenever it gets a hardcore gaming article, Hardcore Gaming 101 article, people start to take notice again.
Right.
But it's still a pretty obscure title.
Mike, I was wondering if they made anything else worth mentioning, and that's actually one of the PC Engine repros I just picked up.
Oh, yeah, is that Facette Amour?
Yeah, it is. And Kazekari Ninja Action. Holy moly!
Well, is that Naxat?
Apparently.
Yeah, they did a lot of kind of anime-inspired games.
Yeah,
they've done a lot of stuff. Not very much in the West, but and Compile does or did. I don't think they exist anymore either, but they did a lot of like space shooters and things. Which these games, I would say, these pinball games all have a lot in common with a space shooter. It's that same kind of visceral, like always moving forward. Things blowing up and flashing. They feel very arcadey in that regard.
Mike, you're the one who told me about Jockey Crush.
Yeah,
and it was the first Super Famicom game I ever bought. It got me to go out and buy a converter. You caused me to spend a lot of money.
I really have.
It's generally your role in my life.
Yeah, I'm the enabler.
You're the opposite of a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, man, I spent a bit of time with Jockey Crush, and it's not as immediately likable, to me at least, as Alien Crush or Devil Crush. One's Crash and one's Crushed, right?
I think they're both Crush. I think they're all Crush games.
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
I think in Japan, I think they're all Crush, but I think something happened here and one's Crash.
Oh, all right. Well,
I'm probably wrong. Edit. But I think of the three,
we'll get it in post.
I think of the three, I think Devil Crush is my favorite.
Is it?
Yeah, it really refined everything about Alien Crush that was janky. You know, with the flickering screens.
Yeah.
You know, they made a nice scrolling table, and I just, there was a little bit more to it. Jockey Crush didn't really have the intensity, I think, of the other two games. Don't get me wrong, still a fantastic game. So I was playing a pinball game very recently that I bought basically just because it was cheap. It's on the Sega Saturn, Japanese import.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic pinball. And it lives up to its name fully. In the bottom right hand corner, there's like a guy going on his quest, you know, and the whole time like there's the background is moving, and it sort of gives you an idea of where this person is in their quest. So it's sort of like an RPG pinball game, and is it like Pinball Quest on the NES? I don't remember Pinball Quest. I remember Pinball and Pinbot.
Yeah, Pinball Quest is exactly a pinball RPG. You have to, like, your guy's the pinball, and you have to, like, shoot him into, like, houses and into people to talk to them and stuff.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I'm not really sure it's good, but...
You know me. It doesn't matter if it's good. Yeah, so I think, strangely, this random pinball game, Fantastic Pinball, I don't want to say it's my favorite, because I haven't spent as much time as I have with, like, the TurboGrafx games. But, man, it's awesome.
Is it? Huh.
Yeah. And I love pinball. I'm not very good at it, but I love playing it, especially when they put a unique spin on it like that, which apparently you just told me is not very unique at all. Yeah, good stuff. You know, I'm gonna throw out my second one, and I hate trying to talk about games that I don't have full comprehension of, but I needed to talk about this one because I really like it and I really want to play through it. I've spent enough time with it to know that it doesn't get the credit it deserves. Elemental Gimmick Gear on Dreamcast.
Okay.
Now, so let's get the BS out of the way. It was developed by a company called Birthday, and it came to the U.S.
I love Japanese company names. Right? They like, their developers really...
They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
It came out on the very last day of 1999. December 31st.
Portentous.
It seems like it's going to be a role-playing game, and it kind of is. There's upgrades and blah blah blah, but it's all a 2D overhead view. The graphics are all hand-drawn sprites and everything, and it's, I guess it would have to be an action RPG, because when you're fighting characters in the overworld, nothing changes. It's just simple, like, you know, attack and no turn-based anything. But then you go into boss battles, and it's like this whole different perspective. It's a 3D based arena, and it's still not turn-based. It's still it's really strange, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those games that I see turn up on lists sometimes of kind of hidden gems. It seems like it's a hard game for people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, it didn't review well when it came out.
Yeah,
I want to say it was when it first came out. It must have come out pretty close to the Dreamcast launch, because that was $9.99.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just a couple months later. You know, and I think anytime you're in that launch window, people are like, "Oh, it's an RPG in the launch window. We're just going to buy it anyway because it doesn't matter." And I think too many people assume that this was just kind of like rushed out for launch or something, and really there's a nice game underneath the somewhat rough exterior. Now, what kind of got to me about this game, the more I thought about it, was the number of games that came out for the Dreamcast that just never got ported to another system.
Yeah.
You would think, okay, we spent all this time developing a game like Elemental Gimmick Gear, and for a system that maybe didn't sell as well as they wanted it to, why not port it over to the PlayStation? Why not give it a chance to get a larger audience? And there's so many titles like that on the Dreamcast.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Saturn too. Really, those two systems have a lot of lonely releases, I guess. I mean, did Birthday even survive long enough for porting to be an option? Here's
the thing about Birthday. I could only find about 6 or 7 games that they ever made. This was the only one that ever got released in the United States. So this was maybe their one chance to break out.
Well, we've talked about this before. Yeah. Smaller developers,
Yep.
It's their chance to shine. That's what they went with. What was there? What else? Do you have anything?
No, it was stuff that just didn't even click with me at all.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like anything worth noting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame.
A lot of visual novels and stuff.
Yeah, probably. Oh wait, why did I think? Yeah, I thought I had more information than that. I don't.
Oh well.
Yeah, just
go out and explore for yourself.
Look at
viewers.
The gameplay.
Yeah.
It's right here. I have no idea where it is. All right. Why don't you give us one more, Mike?
Sure.
At least one more. What time
right.
we got? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to do today. It's the Super Bowl.
Do you want to come to the Super Bowl party I'm going to?
Absolutely fucking not.
Oh.
No.
It's only like 4 people.
That's still too many. I got to edit this thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a couple more, but since this was one of the ones that I talked about. So, I mean, there were a lot of really weird, obscure games on the NES. I think progressively less so as NES nostalgia kind of consumes our generation. People are always going back and looking up all these weird games. But one that still comes up very rarely, which is interesting because it actually got a Nintendo Power cover back in the day. I'm never sure exactly. Are we supposed to be addressing the...
I have no idea.
But is Vice Project Doom.
Yeah. Another game you introduced me to.
Yeah, and this was an impulse buy for me because I remember when I rebought an NES, and my brother gave me an FC Twin, one of those knockoffs for my birthday back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And so I went around buying up a bunch of old NES games, and I was like, I remember this one looking cool, so I bought it, and boy, am I glad that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So it was developed by ICOM, which made kind of a weird collection of games, including the original Legendary Axe and the equally bizarre but pretty decent platformer Totally Rad.
Yeah. Those aren't even the ones that I wrote down.
Oh yeah, would you?
I did see that they had made a Legendary Axe, but I'm one of the only people in the world that likes Amagon on the original NES.
I don't even remember. Yeah,
it's a guy running through the jungle from left to right, and you power up and be this big macho dude.
Yeah, you know what? I do remember that.
It's really hard, and I think it turns people off immediately.
Yeah.
It's a lot of memorization. But the other games that they put out, they eventually got bought by or became a different company, Yumikobo, which was primarily funded by SNK.
Okay.
Yeah. So SNK was basically paying them to make games, and they made Prehistoric Isle 2 on the Neo Geo, which was a dinosaur shooter game. I think you're in a helicopter or something the whole time. And a game that you've brought up multiple times, they made on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, SNK Gals Fighters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then that's considered one of the best handheld fighting games ever made. And despite the fact that it's essentially an all-girl fighter, has no real fan service or...
Boo!
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we already drove off all the female viewers at the beginning with your...
Mission accomplished.
Oh, God.
Who do we have left? Oh, it's just us.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Vice.
Yeah, so Vice Project Doom... it's very much in the style of kind of Ninja Gaiden, the early cinematic platformers. Between each level, there's There's kind of scrolling cutscenes, and there's a story that's actually, considering that there's probably about 40 lines of dialogue total in the game, story's not that bad. It's got an interesting sci-fi twist, kind of Blade Runner-esque. And it's just a really solid example of that. It feels like a very competent game. It's got a really good tone, a kind of dark sci-fi tone. And even with some of the weird enemies, like the guy with a pumpkin for a head that crop up, they all still kind of fit. Your actions as a character, the levels seem to flow together. It's not just like, oh well, we had the fire level, now we got to have the ice level and the sewer level. Like
in the action changes up quite a bit. It's like 3 different types of gameplay.
It does, and there were a handful of other games on the NES that did things that way, like Bayou Billy, and most of them were terrible.
But was Bayou Billy? Did that have like a light gun part?
It did. It had there was a brawler part, some kind of driving thing, like an outrun, I think, or a boat. Wow. And then there was a light gun part.
I don't think I ever made it past the first level.
Yeah,
of Bayou Billy.
I mean, and it was about. Yeah, Bayou Billy, there were like 2 types of enemies. It was like a guy in a red shirt and a guy in a blue shirt. And like as soon as there was more than one on screen, you were fucked because you just couldn't manage more than one guy.
That game got a lot of attention too.
It did. It really did. That was another one that I bought when I was picking up old NES games because I was like, oh, this got a lot of attention. And it's terrible. It's really bad.
Anyway,
but Vice is great, and it like you said, it changes things up. The first level is actually a driving level, which plays out more like a top-down shooter. Like you have to stay on the road, but so I guess like a Spy Hunter then. But it's good. It's like a good top-down shooter, and there's a handful of shooting gallery segments which you control with the controller, and which are also pretty decent.
Can't use light gun for that, can you?
I don't think so. No, which is probably for the best. Yeah, I think it's better to do it this way. Right. And they're probably the weakest part of the game, but they work. They're not bad. They're not. Your gameplay isn't grinding to a halt there. And it's just a great, solid, unsung action platformer for the NES.
All right. It's I've wanted to pick this game up since you and I first met.
It's still cheap too, as far as I know.
It's like $20. And
is it?
It is. And
everything is so fucking expensive.
It really is.
What the hell?
There are so many games on my I will buy this when I can find it for a good deal list. Soul Blazer.
We got to start going to. Soul Blazer. Yeah, we got to start going to yard sales or something this summer.
Yeah, well, we talked about that too. Is that like your chance of finding something? Is it like even worth your time invested at a yard sale? Like just hunting them down. It's gonna take you weeks and weeks to even find one with video games.
Yeah, and
then when you do, it's probably gonna be something with.
It's a lot of legwork, but you find stuff. I don't hit up the thrift stores as much as I used to, but I do every once in a while, and I've found stuff occasionally.
I need to do that. Man, I'm definitely a convenience person though. I don't mind going to the convenience store and spending like $5 on a gallon of milk because I don't want to drive.
You don't want to drive the 2 blocks to the shopping center.
Well, I mean, I've got a Jeep. I think the moment I turn the key, it's $1 in gas.
Yeah.
So
all right,
probably not worth it. You know what, Mike? Let's do one more.
Okay.
I think you've got a good one that I want to talk about too.
Okay, I had 2 more on my list. So which one are you thinking? The arcade game or the Saturn game?
Not the arcade game.
Okay. Oh, that's too bad.
Oh. But you can talk about the arcade.
Well, they're
game.
Both pretty obscure.
Okay.
So again, my love for brawlers factors in here. But this one was a console. Actually, it did get a PC port, but this is basically a console exclusive. 3 Dirty Dwarves. Is kind of a fascinating game. I really enjoy it. I think the gameplay and the mechanically and artistically, it's fascinating. It's a very European game, which is kind of unusual to find on on the Saturn. It was right on the cusp where you started to see more Western developed. Games and it was made by Appaloosa, which also did like Echo the Dolphin and
all of the Echo games.
Yeah,
which is kind of strange because they made that transition to 3D pretty well.
Yeah.
So that's a very adaptive company,
I think they also made like the shitty Contra games, though.
Both of them on PS1.
Yeah.
The Contra Adventure and Legacy of War.
Yeah, which are very, very poorly received.
They also made... This is what I'm here for, apparently.
Okay,
today. To tell you what companies did.
Yeah.
They also made the 32X Hummingbird shooter, Colibri.
Oh, Colibri, really?
Colibri.
That I did not know. My notes just say Echo the Dolphin and Contra.
and then this is... I got 2 more games that they made. One, I think, equally as fascinating is 3 Dirty Dwarfs. They made the King's Quest V port on the NES.
Really?
Right? Isn't that so strange?
Yeah.
That was one of those games I can't believe even came out on the NES.
Yeah, that was a pretty high-end PC game at the time of its release.
God. Yeah, that was like when VGA graphics were like brand new and everything was like digitized voices. And,
bizarre.
And they really found a way to do it on the NES. I think it was maybe a little mind-boggling for NES players at the time.
Yeah.
It was so different.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Looking through Hardcore Gaming, their adventure guide recently, I don't remember their NES ports of King's Quest being particularly well received. But
I mean, I've played through a good portion of it, and I mean, they did the best they could. Remarkably similar.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, well, good on you for being able to pull it off, but maybe you shouldn't have.
So Appaloosa doesn't exist anymore.
No.
But the last game they put out was Jaws Unleashed on the Xbox and PS2, which not a horrible game either.
No.
Actually, get halfway decent reviews.
Yeah.
Way better than the original Jaws game, which I still love.
Yeah. That's fine.
Give us some more dirt on
Three Dirty Dwarfs. It's a very European game. I think they're Hungarian, or they were Hungarian. Which again, that's what developer was coming out of Hungary in 1997.
I think we found them.
Yeah, very European game. Has that kind of grungy artwork to it. Very like Danger Mouse looking character designs. And the premise, the story is kind of bizarrely complex for basically 3 dwarves running around and blowing up everything. The premise is that there's a bunch of psychic children were kidnapped and put in a government research facility. They brought their Dungeons and Dragons character, or they don't say Dungeons and Dragons, but they brought their pen and paper role-playing characters to life to come save them. So
awesome.
So is it sci-fi? Is it magic real? Like, what is going on here? And that's a pretty wild psychic power. I wish I could bring to life things that I draw. Right.
Now, I had mentioned, if I could go back to one time in particular in gaming history, it would be the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
But man, there's something so beautiful about the Saturn's graphics.
Yeah.
And this game specifically, I think really brings out like the capabilities of the Saturn.
Absolutely.
Like the 2D and the 3D, it all kind of like works together.
Yeah,
and big pixelated zooming and stuff, or
scaling.
scaling.
Yeah, and it's so smooth too. And again, not to keep going back to the European thing, it's very rare to see European artwork in a game like this, and it's even rarer to see it so smooth and fluid and it's and from a gameplay perspective, it's a really unique game too, because it's a brawler, but it's not just to like, again, run right and pound on the guy. You start out with the eponymous 3 dwarves, and one of them has a baseball bat and an unlimited supply of baseballs. The other one has a bowling pin and an unlimited supply of bowling balls, and the third guy has a shotgun. And you can multiplay it too. If you've got up to 3 people, you can have each of them controlling a dwarf. And it's very progressively designed, because one hit will take a guy out. He gets hit, he's stunned, he's down. But as long as there's still one dwarf upright, he can kind of go and dope slap the guy on the ground, and he'll get back up and jump back onto the team. Yeah. So it's almost very much like stuff that a gameplay mechanic that's been coming out very recently, or fairly recently, with like the Gears of War or Saints Row, where if a guy goes down, if you can get to him in time, you can pull him back upright. And in 3 Dirty Dwarves, it's pretty fast-paced action. The enemies move quickly. There's usually a fair number of them on screen, so it's kind of always about that give and take between continually attacking your foes and keeping your dwarf. Because if all 3 go down, it's game over, or not game over, but you have to start the level over again, and they can be pretty long.
Well, which is funny because I think when you and I played the game, I think we had a harder time playing it together than we did separately, because the kind of like the character management, like who's down, who's controlling who, that whole thing. I think it's harder when you're splitting that between two people, and usually multiplayer makes things easier.
Yeah, I almost think it would be easier with 3 people, because what happens when you're playing one person, if a guy goes down, immediately you take over the next guy. So it's very fluid in that way. Where with 2 people, if a guy goes down, he takes over the second player, but if somebody else, it gets very confusing. I think you're right in that regard.
Yeah, it's either 1 player or a 3-player game.
Yeah, but it's really great, and it's got such a just weird, very like Earthworm Jim sense of world building. You're traveling through, I think it's basically the Bronx,
right?
Yeah. And it's just full of, I mean, it looks almost post-apocalyptic. I'm not really sure from the story if it's supposed to be, I don't know. But
we won't get into the minutia too much.
It's post-apocalyptic, but it's like full of orcs and like goblins and dragons and shit, and like, but it also has like crazy homeless people with guns, and like it's just such a bizarre hodgepodge of design. And like you said, there's all sorts of interactions between the foreground and the background. Like there's scenes where there'll be guys throwing stuff at you from buildings in the background, and you can turn and face them and shoot at them.
All of the bosses are awesome.
Yeah, the bosses there's a lot of movement and scrolling. The first boss, I think, is a guy wearing a suit made out of junkyard dogs that he throws at you. And you fight him as you're like running a circle around him, and you have to like shoot inwards or throw baseballs or things. It's really bizarre and fascinating, and it's got a great soundtrack too, a really great like kind of pumping Euro rock kind of soundtrack.
Oh, Saturn.
I know, it's weird, and the weirdest part of this game is this seems like exactly the type of game that would be like phenomenal cult classic. Only one system. Yep. Very obscure.
Really stood the test of
2D,
time.
Yeah, holds up very well. But nothing really. It's not, considering all of the other Saturn games that are astronomically expensive. Right. You can still get this one pretty reasonably priced.
It's a $50 game, but it's it certainly should rank with the $100 games.
Yeah. I almost wonder if it's because the type of games that tend to get really expensive, and this is a weird way to phrase it, but I almost wonder if it's kind of a little bit of racism. The types of games that get really expensive they tend to be Japanese games. They tend to be Japanese 2D kind of games, and they have that look to them, that very anime-styled look. I almost feel like people see this game, and they see the kind of grungy, dirty-looking hulking guys on the front, and they're like, ugh, what is that? That's not Moai or whatever the fuck they're into nowadays.
Well, I have no idea if this is true or not, and I'm 99% sure that it is. Before Final Fantasy VII, RPGs didn't sell as well in the States.
No, absolutely not.
So I think that's why a lot of the Japanese games pre-Final Fantasy VII are the more expensive ones, because the print runs were lower, and they were bought by the hardcore fans that, I mean, maybe to this day, like, still don't want to let go of them, So not only was the print run lower, you get the more of the hardcore fan base.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna go with that over racism, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Mike, okay. I think that's the episode.
Okay.
I can't believe we made it through another one.
Yeah.
We've done like 200 of these.
Yeah. I know.
But we're calling this episode 2.
This is episode 2.
Episode 2. Mike, this has been another episode of Gaming Without Parole.
It sure has.
If you want to, you know what? I've been trying to figure out the best way for people to contact us. Don't.
Yeah, we don't care what you think.
The website's a disaster. We don't have anything taken care of there. So basically, if you want to say anything to us, if you have a suggestion for games you want us to cover, for Gaming Without Parole or Backlogged,
yeah, we'll do anything. Anything.
No, leave it in the comments, man. Leave it in the comments.
Yeah, well, they can still email us. We've got an email address.
We do. It's like gamingwithoutparole@gmail.com. I'm like, I want to wait until it's like Mike at Without Parole and Bryan at Without Parole. And right now we don't have that set up. So just leave a comment. there's one. So there's one comment. So I think we'll be able to.
Is it somebody
see
trying to sell male enhancement?
No, it's somebody trying to plug their own podcast.
Of course.
But hey,
it's not my first time at the rodeo.
Right. Thank you for watching anyway.
Yeah. Hey, cool. I hope you watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I swear I'm going to watch your podcast. Anyway, for Gaming Without Parole, my name's Bryan Paul.
I'm Mike Zeller.
And we're going to see you next week. Thanks for watching.